My ego is the size of a school bus currently, and I'm gonna try and keep it in check for this video, but I am a genius! I'm sorry, I don't know what that was. For those of you who are a little bit confused about what's currently going on, Chapter 4 of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex came out. Or, well, it leaked. It came out in Japan, and then a couple of people translated it somewhat poorly, and now I've read it. And if for some reason this is your first time ever seeing one of my videos, well, welcome. And also, I make a lot of videos about Naruto and Boruto, but when I'm talking about Boruto, I'm usually theorizing about what's to come in Boruto. And after the most recent chapter, that being Chapter 3 of 2 Blue Vortex, I made a couple of theories. As I do, I like reading the content and formulating my own answers before I get those answers. And a couple of the theories that I formulated were spot on. See, with the coming of Chapter 4 of 2 Blue Vortex, there is a lot to talk about in the Boruto universe. Like the fact that Boruto now has Flying Thunder God technique, his grandfather's signature move. Or now, for the first time in the first 4 chapters of 2 Blue Vortex, we've finally seen where Sasuke is, and he's in a tree. Something I predicted. But just before we saw Sasuke's location, we saw that Boruto is working with Kashin Koji, something else that I predicted. Mind you, long before Boruto was shown having toads. So you have to excuse me if my ego has been a bit fanned. But a lot more happened in this chapter than just stroking my massive ego. And I mean, a lot more. Well, every single chapter of 2 Blue Vortex that has come out in the last 4 months has been absolutely insane. This is by far and away the most insane chapter maybe of Boruto ever. Because not only do we get those 3 reveals that I just talked about, but we also got the introduction of an entirely new Akatsuki. An Akatsuki that Sasuke is somehow tangentially connected to. And while we understand the identity of 2 of those members, the other 2 members we have no idea about. And therefore, Chapter 4 of 2 Blue Vortex has done the thing that every chapter of 2 Blue Vortex prior to it has done, which is answer some of our questions, but leave us with even more important, pressing, and burning questions. In fact, this chapter was so chock full of bombastic action and plot twists that I'm not going to be able to cover everything that I need to talk about as it pertains to this chapter in one video. So we're going to treat this chapter like we've treated all of the previous chapters, where I'm going to use this video to break down exactly what happened in the chapter, and then we'll use our next couple of videos on this page to break down theories and answer possible questions. So today, I'm just going to be giving you the facts and introducing some of the possible theories that I'll be working on down the line. So with no further ado, let's get into Chapter 4 of 2 Blue Vortex. But before we get into anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you want to see me use my genius level intellect that for some reason only works for anime knowledge, guys, go ahead and follow my other channel, The Weeb Commander, where instead of talking about Naruto and Boruto, I talk all other anime. Got a whole lot of JJK theories popping up on that page that I'm hoping pay off like they do on this page. And if you guys want to hear me talk about things like Boruto and JJK simultaneously, guys, go ahead and follow Otaku's Anonymous, my anime podcast, where me and Daddy Mata break down everything that happened in anime and manga this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Or if you guys want to look like you formulate theories about anime that you love, go ahead and meander on over into my merch store, otakusanonymous.net, where you can pick up some of the greatest anime t-shirts, sweatshirts, and sticker packs known to man. Wow. Wowie, wowie, wow, Kishimoto is cooking. This man hasn't missed in like a year. And it is such a shame because the average person outside the Boruto manga fandom is like,
oh, Boruto, you mean that anime was 75% filler?
The next time somebody says that, grab them by the collar of their shirt and say, read, you illiterate jackass. Because outside of JJK and One Piece, Boruto has been the best manga on Earth for like a year straight. But what did our man Kishimoto cook up today? Well, that would be none other than the 4th chapter of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex. And a lot happened in this chapter, so we should get right into it. The chapter opens right where chapter 3 left off, with Code in the Kara dimension looking over the Ten Tails. And once again, we see that the Ten Tails is in an emaciated form and pinned to the ground by chakra rods, while also being covered in claw markings. But as Code is looking out over the Ten Tails, he's replaying the conversation he just had with Boruto back in his head. More importantly, he's replaying the part of the conversation where Boruto tells Code to destroy the claw grimes now while they're still under his control. However, Code is perplexed by Boruto saying this to him, as so far as Code knows, the claw grime's only directive in life is to eat. And therefore, Code doesn't really understand how the claw grimes could lead to the worst possible future for everyone. The message especially doesn't ring true with Code because he wants to destroy the earth anyways. So claw grimes turning every human into trees isn't really the end of the world when you consider the fact that he wants to make a god tree that kills all humans. And while humans may not be turned into individual trees through the organic god tree method, all of their chakra and life force is soaked into one god tree, so they're gonna die anyways. But then smash cut back to Boruto, who's still standing in front of Kawaki, and the transponder toad that's in Boruto's jacket is yelling at Boruto to hurry up because they're running out of time. But Boruto tells the transponder toad to be quiet because he's not as skillful as his grandfather. It's at this point that Boruto says found it and uses Flying Thunder God to transport himself to the toad that he placed on Code, or possibly to Code. We're not entirely sure. Either Boruto in the fight that he had with Code was able to place a Flying Thunder God seal on Code, or he just had one on the toad that he slipped onto Code. Either way, Boruto uses Flying Thunder God to teleport around Code, which is sick, but it also answers one of the longest standing questions in the entirety of the Naruto community. See, for years, I have been asked the question, could Minato use Flying Thunder God to get out of the Kamui dimension, or to travel between dimensions if somebody who uses space-time ninjutsu were to throw him into a separate dimension? And every single time I have said yes, because Flying Thunder God allows you to access a dimensional void, a space between dimensions where there is no matter. And this is why Flying Thunder God travel is instantaneous, because there's no matter in this dimensional void. And therefore, even when you are using Flying Thunder God or Flying Raijin to access a point in your own dimension, you still are traveling interdimensionally because you're leaving your dimension to enter into a dimensional void. However, there's never been any data to substantiate that point. And therefore, in hypothetical battles of Obito versus Minato, or Minato versus really anybody with space-time ninjutsu, everybody's usually just like, oh, well, they can throw him in a different dimension and then GG's. However, with Boruto being able to use Flying Thunder God from Konoha to the Kara dimension, that proves that FTG travels interdimensionally. But that isn't even the craziest thing about this moment. I mean, obviously, Boruto using Flying Raijin is nuts. But the way that Boruto phrases, I'm not skillful like my grandfather, is weird to me. See, the obvious question to ask here when you see Boruto use Flying Thunder God is, who taught him that? Because as it currently stands, there is nobody in the Boruto universe who knows that jutsu. There's a technical possibility that Naruto knows how to use it, but he's in the Daikokuten. And outside of Naruto, there is technically no one else who should know how to use that jutsu. On top of this, why does Boruto know how skillful his grandfather is at using FTG? Which raises the somewhat logical question, is there a possibility Boruto learned Flying Raijin from his grandfather? Which is the next video that we're going to be exploring on this page, which will come out tomorrow, as this video comes out on Saturday and that video comes out on Sunday. And there are a lot of possible answers to who taught Boruto Flying Raijin, so trust me, it needs its own video. Regardless, moving on, Boruto is able to identify the toad in a separate dimension and use Flying Thunder God to get there. However, after Boruto teleports to the Kara dimension, Code snaps around and looks away from the Ten Tails. And in the 1 second that Code looks away from the Ten Tails that he had pinned to the floor with chakra rods, it disappears. And while this moment is kind of hard to read in the manga, essentially what happens is that the Ten Tails is yanked out of the chakra rods so fast that the chakra rods fall and pierce into the ground. And this happens so quick that the toad that was on Code didn't even see what happened. And it's at this point that a new enemy enters the fray. And that new enemy is Bug. Now, Bug, for those of you who don't remember, is a man who worked at the Kara hideout. He was a small, borderline toothless man with a hat and a beard, and basically the entirety of his role was to almost get killed by cyborgs. And that was revealed in chapter 3 that Bug had been placed in a tree, which I didn't really think all that much of because it's Bug. Literally, who cares? And on top of that, it kind of makes sense. I mean, these claw grimes are getting made in the Kara dimension. Bug is a human in the Kara dimension who's not in charge of the claw grimes, and the claw grimes' prime directive is to eat any and all humans. So yeah, Bug getting taken out, not the craziest thing. What is the craziest thing is that it's very clear that at one point Bug was a claw grime. As he stands in the signature stance of the claw grimes with his back hunched and his arms in front of him, and his legs have that kind of weird long thumb thing. However, on top of this, he also has claw marks on his face, like every single claw grime. Probably the most concerning thing about Bug's new claw grimified state is the fact that he has 2 Rinnegan, which is concerning and not concerning simultaneously, and we'll get into why. See, my previous theory on how the superior claw grime that we met got a Rinnegan is that they stole it from Sasuke, as it was on the claw grime side of the face that Sasuke has his Rinnegan in, and it was only 1 Rinnegan, and there's only 1 Rinnegan technically in the Boruto universe. That is, until now. But now with the arrival of this new and improved Bug, there's 3 Rinnegan, which means that the Rinnegan that we're seeing in these superior claw grimes aren't coming from Sasuke. And it just means that inherently these superior claw grimes have Rinnegan. So if you were worried that the superior claw grimes were stealing Sasuke's Rinnegan, then I guess breathe easy. However, it's much more concerning in the fact that now all superior claw grimes have the Rinnegan, which has a base set of power for a somewhat common enemy, is absolutely nuts. That means that pretty much any and all superior claw grimes will be stronger than Nagato. And you think the Boruto universe is weaker than Naruto's. And thus with Bug appearing the second that the Ten Tails disappeared, it's pretty easy to infer that Bug was the one who stole the Ten Tails, which means that Bug is strong enough to not only move the Ten Tails, but also rip it out from under Chakra Rod, something that the Ten Tails itself could not destroy. Now, this raises the incredibly logical question of why would Bug steal the Ten Tails? And believe it or not, that's also gonna be another video. That one's not coming out till Tuesday, because there's actually a relatively big and wide-spanning reason that Bug and his eventual other Shinju/Akatsuki members would steal the Ten Tails, and it may not be for what you think. And trust me, it needs its own video. Now, Bug's presence seems to confuse Code, who believed that Bug is trapped in a tree, so what is he doing here? However, Boruto clears it up for Code that what we're looking at isn't Bug, but a Shinju. Now, these entities being called Shinju is massively interesting. Well, at least it has the possibility of being massively interesting. See, the word Shinju in Japan actually has an incredibly dark meaning. See, we don't really have a word for it in English, but what it means in Japanese is a co-unaliving. That is to say, two people decide to take their own lives simultaneously. Whether that be two friends, two lovers like Romeo and Juliet, an entire group of people, all that matters is that more than one person decide to end their lives simultaneously. And there actually is a little bit of credence that we'll talk about in the Tuesday video as to why they would be called this. However, the other possibility for as to why they would be called Shinju is because it's a shortened version of Shinjutsu, and it's a possibility that the Shinju's creation ties back into Shinju, which is the form of ninjutsu that all ninjutsu were created from. A form of ninjutsu specifically available to Otsutsukis. But as it currently stands, we can't really say as to whether or not them being called Shinju has anything to do with the Japanese word or has more to do with Shinjutsu. I'd like to also once again reiterate that I read a fan translation, so there might be a couple of things that I missed that got lost in translation. But fortunately, the next couple of pages are scarce in terms of text, because this Shinju of Bug decides to press the offensive against Boruto, and does it in a very impressive capacity. I mean, this is Boruto we're talking about, the man who just no-diffed and no-limiter Code? Yeah, Bug just snags him and slams him into a wall. And Bug asks Boruto, you came here by yourself, Boruto Otsutsuki. Did you come here to be feasted upon? Because if we remember correctly, a Claw Grime's prime derivative is to eat people until eventually they eat an Otsutsuki. And Boruto is now 100% Otsutsuki. But Boruto, in order to create distance from Bug, uses the ox sign. I'm sorry, I did that wrong. The ox sign is, oh god, I'm so bad at the ox sign. Wait, so it's fingers, and then it's two down, and then, no, wait, is it all down? No, it's all across, and then that's it. That's the ox sign. This one sucks. But an interesting thing about the ox sign is that the ox sign is actually the first sign for Chidori, and Boruto surrounds himself in lightning release to get Bug off him. And thus there's a possibility that in the 1 year that Boruto and Sasuke spent together, that Sasuke taught him some iterations of Chidori. However, this doesn't stun Bug for long, as he then goes back in for the kill against Boruto, who once again uses Flying Raijin to teleport back to the Toad near Code. However, Code is caught a serious case of being useless, because he's still being affected by Rasengan Uzuhiko. So he falls over and goes, oh, Boruto, explain to me how this jutsu works. To which Boruto simply doesn't, but he touches his chest and goes, okay, I've undone Rasengan Uzuhiko. You're not gonna die anymore. Which, if you were somebody like me who was waiting to hear about how Rasengan Uzuhiko actually works, boy oh boy, were you slightly disappointed. But what this does mean is that Code is now back to normal and won't die at the hands of Rasengan Uzuhiko. And it's using this newfound health that Code decides to ask the incredibly important question in this scenario: what happened to the Ten Tails? To which we don't really get an answer to, because Boruto is like, look what you did. Every person that's ever been eaten by a Claw Grime turns into this, and this is a Shinju. Now mind you, Bug was about a 3'6" little dude whose entire ability was the gat he had. But now Bug is a dual Rinnegan wielder able to pressure Boruto, which means that every no-name ninja that's ever been eaten by a Claw Grime is eventually going to turn into a Shinju somewhere around Bug's levels of power. Which is why Boruto was like, hey Code, while you you still gotta control all these things. How about we don't make the world's strongest army? However, before Boruto and Code can have a complex conversation about the morals of turning the entire world into Shinju, another Shinju appears, but this one isn't Bug. And Mohawk Shinju decides to make the cool supervillain entrance where he floats down from out of nowhere and spouts some exposition, but some important exposition that will almost definitely play into the plot of Boruto later. Because remember, ladies and gentlemen, Kishimoto never does anything for nothing. So Mohawk Shinju, as he's descending down to Boruto and Code, says it's Chakra. The lives on this planet and all the lives that have perished on this planet, it sucks in all chakra. And by it, the Shinju is talking about the God Tree. Basically, the take-home message from what the Shinju is trying to say is that the God Tree doesn't only take all of the chakra of all living beings on Earth, but also the chakra from all beings that have died on Earth. And while the lives that have perished that lived on this planet line seems like kind of a throwaway line, this could be the true key as to why everybody is so interested in Earth. Because you remember who cast away their physical body on Earth? None other than Shibai, the quite literal Otsutsuki god, which would explain why Kaguya and Ishiki came to Earth, and would also explain why Kaguya became so powerful after consuming the Earth's chakra fruit, and would also explain why Kaguya wanted the Earth's chakra fruit so badly. It would also explain why wave after wave after wave of Otsutsuki keep coming to this planet to try and turn it into a chakra fruit, because any chakra fruit made from this planet will contain the chakra of Shibai Otsutsuki. Now, Mohawk Shinju goes on to say that as Claw Grimes, their instinct was to eat anything in hopes of turning into a god tree. Ever since Code gave them ego, that is to say personality, well, not like personality. In psychology, there's three parts of your psyche. There's your id, which is all primordial and primitive needs, like I need water, I need food, I want to reproduce. And then there's ego, which is the rational, conscious version of your psyche that makes you be like, oh, I like the color pink. And then there's your super ego, which tells you what things are right and what things are wrong. For a long time, the Claw Grimes only had id, the primal urge to eat anything. Now they've acquired ego, which allows them to make decisions about their life, meaning these Shinju no longer eat everything they can get their hands on. And oh, by the way, Mohawk Shinju isn't the only Shinju whose identity we don't know, because right after Mohawk Shinju gets done with his dialogue, Harley Quinn Shinju shows up. And Harley Quinn Shinju appears to know Code, and also, like, not super like him. As Harley Quinn Shinju roughly says, mind you, this is a fan translation, you're always like that despite your will. Your destiny is to be a clown being used by someone at a laughable extent. Basically, Harley Quinn Shinju is saying to Code that he's always going to be somebody else's puppet, even though he believes he's the biggest bad on Earth. So who are Mohawk Shinju and Harley Quinn Shinju? We're not super sure, but I do have theories, and you're not gonna believe this. Those theories need their own video as well, because there's a lot of possible options and none of them are fantastic, but a couple of them are okay. And that video is gonna come out on Thursday. But we're not done revealing Shinju, because after Harley Quinn Shinju, there's a fourth Shinju, and this Shinju is the most important of the Shinju. This Shinju, when he first appears to be a large hooded man. However, this appears to be the Shinju that Boruto is focused on. And right before we get to see Boruto battle against this large hooded Shinju, we cut back to Konoha, where Kawaki is reporting to Shikamaru that Boruto suddenly disappeared after Code suddenly disappeared. And therefore Shikamaru, the smartest man on the planet, somehow comes to the conclusion that Boruto was there to fight Code, and that after their battle, he was tracking Code to whatever Code's new location was. However, it takes Sarada kicking down the door again to the Hokage's office, not great security there, where she says it's incredibly simple. Boruto came to Konoha to fight against Code. Boruto won against Code, Code retreated, Boruto followed. Which is kind of wild from Sarada, because she is technically showing her hand to being on Boruto's side to Kawaki, which he might have known already, but we don't know that. And therefore, Sarada is essentially going, yeah, your brainwashing didn't work on me, Kawaki, I'm still on his side. What are you gonna do about it? To which Kawaki gets real angsty about, and he goes, oh, I'm an Otsutsuki, but the only reason I have my powers is to kill the rest of them. And when I've killed the rest of them, I can disappear. And then Sarada gets somewhat equally angsty and goes, yeah, I can't let you kill Boruto because I want to become the Hokage one day. She's just Naruto, but in high heels. And then Shikamaru continues to use his over 200 IQ to go, what are these Claw Grimes doing biting people? Are they trying to make a forest? Yeah, that's a real question he asked. To which Sarada says, yeah, I don't really know what they're trying to do, but I do know that everybody who gets bitten is still alive. That Boruto, no matter how you feel about him, is trying to defeat Code, and therefore we should work collaboratively with Boruto. So there actually is a possibility that Konoha will assist Boruto in his battle against the likes of Code and maybe the Shinju, which would would be nice, but would also be kind of confusing with Kawaki there. We then cut back to Code and Boruto in the car dimension, and we finally see all four of the Shinju next to each other. There's Hooded Shinju, Mohawk Shinju, Harley Quinn Shinju, and Bug. However, out of these four Shinju, like we've already established, Boruto is eerily fixed on the Hooded Shinju. And thus Boruto, as soon as he can, tries to mount a surprise attack against said Hooded Shinju. However, before he can mount a surprise attack, because he hesitated in attacking the Hooded Shinju comes and attacks him and Code. But they dodge. And while the Hooded Shinju is attacking Boruto, we finally get to see its face, and boy oh boy, is it just Sasuke? See, the hood isn't actually a hood. It's an artistic representation of Sasuke's hair through the medium of a claw mark. So is this Shinju Sasuke? Well, no. Because what we saw earlier in the chapter is that the Shinju of Bug exists independently of the bug in the tree. And therefore, these Shinju work more like avatars of the claw grimes that turn themselves into trees when they bit somebody. And therefore, people like Sasuke and Bug who have been bitten stay in the trees that built around them. However, a Shinju is made from that tree that gets to go live its own Shinju life. And these Shinju have pretty much all of the abilities of your standard claw grime, but they also have two Rinnegan. And therefore, as they are claw grimes, they appear to have shinobi-ware-esque abilities. That is to say that Bug is able to turn his hand into a giant mouth, and the Sasuke claw grime is able to turn his arm into a blade. But it goes further than this, because the Shinju also have all of the abilities of the person they bit. As after the first swipe misses, Sasuke's Shinju activates Chidori, which Boruto manages to nullify with a Rasengan, or a Rasengan Uzuhiko, but it just looks like your standard Rasengan, which is impressive when you consider the fact that the last time Chidori met a Rasengan, it blew off Naruto and Sasuke's arms. So maybe there's a nullification property to the Rasengan Uzuhiko when it comes to ninjutsu, or both this version of Sasuke and Boruto weren't doing their strongest possible attacks. But the rest of the Shinju don't want to be left out of the fun, so they decide to hop into the battle between Boruto and Sasuke, with Bug using his Manchi arm and the Harley Quinn Shinju using some form of Earth Release, which may or may not key us into the possible identity of this Harley Quinn Shinju. But that is actually the one theory I am still actively working on, because boy oh boy does that one not have a concrete answer. However, Boruto, now up to his rib cage in Earth Release and having all of the Shinju close in on him, begs Code to help him. However, Code, being Code, is like, nah. But when he's going, nah, he actually gives us some incredibly important information. Because in this moment, Code says, even if I don't do anything, they, on their own, are trying to be a complete Shinju by eating you. Which might be a little scenario of the fan translation isn't necessarily perfect. But basically what I'm getting from this moment is that Code is saying, well, if these Shinju kill you and eat you, that kind of is exactly what I was going for. However, the term complete Shinju is odd. Because what one would assume Code is referencing here is that if the Shinju ate Boruto, they would become god trees. And then upon becoming a god tree, Code would be able to eat the chakra fruit, become an Otsutsuki, and then everyone's happy. Well, not every Code is happy. But the decision to use the term complete Shinju is really weird. But we should take this tidbit of information and keep it with us. Unlike how Code kept with Boruto, because he realized that all of these incredibly powerful Shinjus trying to kill and eat Boruto actually serves his cause. So he just chuckles and dips out into one of his claw marks. Thank God we released the Rasengan Uzuhiko on him, right? Meanwhile, Boruto's transponder Toad is screaming at him to get out of there as fast as possible, which Boruto does. Remember, Boruto now knows Flying Raijin. He can get out of any situation he wants to, all but instantaneously. However, after Boruto Flying Raijin's away, we get the Mohawk Shinju talking for a little bit. And what the Mohawk Shinju says is very interesting. He says, "You were lucky, Otsutsuki Boruto." Everybody keeps referring to him as an Otsutsuki, which is crazy. I mean, like, I guess it's not inaccurate, but his last name's Uzumaki. Regardless, moving on, he says, "You're lucky that our ego has recently awakened, and that the curiosity and desire for new information flowing into our brains outweighs our urge to consume." Now, while some would say, oh, this is just a plot explanation as to why the four Shinju didn't kill Boruto, and that's kind of plot armor for Boruto, it isn't. See, because let's assume just for 1 second that if any one of these four Shinju were to eat Boruto, that they would turn into a god tree. I believe that what the Mohawk Shinju is trying to say here is that they don't want to turn into a god tree, that the creation of an ego in their brain is actually overruling their instincts, because they understand if they eat Boruto, they'll lose that ego. Because a god tree is not alive. It is a tool to make a chakra fruit that dies after the chakra fruit has been plucked. But as claw grimes that have now turned into Shinju, that is technically their purpose. And therefore the four Shinju that were battling against Boruto didn't want to eat him, because eating him essentially equates to death, which gives credence to the idea that these Shinju are still able to turn into a god tree and not a complete Shinju. However, the Mohawk Shinju says, flee wherever you want, destiny will always follow you, which is kind of the major overarching theme of Boruto, him trying to escape his destiny. As the second that Boruto was born, he was destined to be a genius, as he was the son of the Hokage. However, after he acquired the karma marking the Jogan, Momoshiki anticipated he would have an incredibly dark future, and it wasn't until Boruto decided to not give the reins of his body over to Momoshiki in chapter 80 that he began to prove that whatever destiny that those around him believe that he's gonna have to fulfill, he will not do. So now, instead of just Momoshiki trying to get Boruto to give into his darkness and feed Kawaki to the Ten Tails and eat the chakra fruit so Momoshiki can be revived, there's also the 4 Shinju, who I'm just gonna call the new Akatsuki, who want Boruto to be fed to either a claw grime or possibly the Ten Tails, which is going to be another video. Okay, back on the track. After Boruto uses Flying Thunder God, he teleports himself back to a hideout. And at this hideout, there's a big old tree. And as Boruto is sitting at the base of this tree holding on to his headband, guess who rounds the corner? Kashin Koji. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, Kishimoto never does anything for nothing. There's a reason he left Kashin Koji alive, and now we know. But the first thing that Kashin Koji says as he rounds the tree is, do you want to instantly destroy this planet? Which also gives more credence to the theory that if these Shinju ate Boruto, they would have formed a god tree, because the formation of a god tree would have been basically the only thing that could kill the entire Earth instantaneously. To which Boruto apologizes, saying, I'm sorry, I rushed. And Kashin Koji says to Boruto, I'm not trying to calm you down, but just so you know, nothing has changed. We're still gonna fight against, well, now the Shinju. So the initial plan was to force Code to kill all the Claw Grimes before they turned into Shinju. Now, as to how Kashin Koji understood that the Claw Grimes would turn into Shinju, we simply do not know. It could possibly have something to do with Amado down the line, and while that could be a video on its own, I don't have enough information in my own brain yet to formulate one. But more likely than not, it has something to do with Amado, but I don't know what it has to do with Amado, because Amado thinks that Kashin Koji is dead. Or at least Amado wanted Kashin Koji dead, and now Kashin Koji probably wants Amado dead. So they're probably not collaborating. There is a possibility that Sasuke was the first ever person bitten by a Claw Grime, and therefore his Shinju was the first Shinju, and therefore Boruto, after seeing Sasuke develop a Shinju, wanted to make sure that no more were ever formed. At this point, after Kashin Koji tells Boruto that they're gonna fight, that Boruto says, I'm sorry, I'm gonna need you to wait a little longer. And it's at this point that we pan out and see the tree that he's sitting at the base of is the tree that Sasuke is turned into, which is such a hard panel. And most notably, guys, guess what part of Sasuke's body is caught up in the tree? Can you guess? Can you give me a guess, everybody? Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, it's his left side, also known as the part of his body that has a broken Rinnegan and a lost arm. Very noticeably, Sasuke's right arm is outside of the tree and his right eye is out of the tree. Now, why do we think that they would put the half-broken side of Sasuke in the tree? Well, that, ladies and gentlemen, is because when Sasuke gets out of the tree, the properties of the tree will heal everything that was broken on that side. At least is my current working theory. Because say it with me now, everybody, Kishimoto doesn't do anything for nothing. And while it does bring us to the end of the chapter, can we talk about just how hard the last panel of every single chapter has been in 2 Blue Vortex? Chapter 1, we get the still shot of Boruto facing off against Code. Chapter 2, we get the reveal of Rasengan Uzuhiko. Chapter 3, we get the reveal of Boruto having toads. And Chapter 4, we get the reveal of Sasuke as a tree with Boruto sitting at the base of it. I actually might get this panel tattooed on me like in the next month. In fact, I'm texting my tattoo artist right now. Hi, Winnie, I know you're watching this. And with that, that's everything that happened in Boruto's new chapter and the possible theories that it could lead to. What did you guys think about this chapter? What was your favorite moment? I know there was a lot of possibilities, but tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. I need my ego checked. Not by you, don't be mean in my comments. I don't know, I'm gonna go be wrong about something.